Welcome to Excel Basics video number 11. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on my YouTube channel, then click on my college website link and you can download the workbook, Excel Basics. Hey, in this video number 11, we're going to put all of our formula things that we've learned so far together with spreadsheet setup to see the best example we've had of why spreadsheets are so efficient. We have some names. We have January sales, commissions, base salary, and a formula calculating gross pay. Our first goal is to calculate our deductions. We have a column for FICA, Medicare, and federal. Now this is a simplified example. If you were going to do federal income taxes using Excel, you'd have to use a big long VLOOKUP. But our goal here is to see how to set up our spreadsheets efficiently. Now, notice we have two assumption tables, and which one do we pick? We have FICA, Medicare, federal here, right? Oh, but we have it here too, FICA, Medicare, federal withholdings. So, which one do we choose? This is as important as any other aspect of Excel. How do you set up your spreadsheet? Well, here's a very simple rule. If you want to use mixed cell references, which will allow you to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 15 formulas by just entering one formula, you have to set up the assumption table and the table itself with the same orientation. Notice FICA, Medicare, federal, the labels are set up horizontally. Well, they're set up horizontally here also. That's the table you want to use. Parallel, parallel. When they are not parallel, where they're set up vertically and horizontally, forget it. You can't use mixed references. There is no way to create one formula and copy it to all of the deductions. So and I'm going to do our trick like we did in the last video. So I'm going to highlight the whole range of cells that are going to get our formula. And the active cell up in the corner, you can enter your formula and then hit Control Enter. Now here we go, equals, and I'm going to click on the first gross pay times, and I'm going to click on our FICA deduction. Now, as in our earlier videos, we need to figure out what type of cell reference is it. Is it relative, absolute, or one of the mixed? Well, we'll resort to our two questions for each cell reference. And that'll always lead us to the right type of cell reference. Now, here, this gross pay right here. When I copy the formula down, do I want it locked on the 4,500 or do I want it to move relatively one cell to my left? I want it to move relatively. So I don't need a dollar sign in front of the 3, the row reference. Now, let's ask the second question. We asked up and down. Now let's ask left to right. What do we want E3 to do? When we go over to Medicare, to the G column, and then federal withholdings, the H column, do we want it locked on the gross pay? You betcha. Each one of those calculations require that we use that same gross pay. So I'm going to put my cursor somewhere touching that cell reference and then hit the F4 1, 2, 3 times. Because I'm copying it across the columns, I need to put a dollar sign in front of the letter, which is E. All right, so we answered those two questions. Let's move on to the next one. What about this F12? Oh, that's this FICA deduction down here. When we copy it down through the FICA column, do we want it locked? You bet we do. Now, when we're copying it, are we moving across? We're copying it across rows? Yes, if you want it locked and you're copying across rows, the dollar sign has to be in front of the number. So I'm going to hit the F4 key twice. That's the first question. Let's ask the second question. When I copy over to the G column, the Medicare deduction, do I want it locked on the 6.2 or do I want it to move relatively, which in essence would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 below. So when I move over here, do I want it looking 9 below? You betcha. So no dollar sign in front of the F. That formula will work. Now I can hold Control and then tap Enter, and it goes into all the cells. Now, we'll come back to this actual payroll table later and learn how to use the round function. But for the time being, let's see if we can highlight this whole set of values here. And then I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut Control 1. Control 1 because I want to add some number. This is Format Cells dialog box on the Number tab. I want to add currency with, actually, let's do accounting because that'll line up the decimals, and then with no dollar sign. Click OK. Hey, wait a second. I don't see any decimals. Let's do that one again. Control 1. Oh, decimal places. I have to increase it to 2. Later, we'll come back and see how to use the round function. All right, so we've orientated and learned about how to orientate the assumption table, not like this, but like this, because the labels are like that. We did our mixed cell references. Now, let's add up all of our deductions. I'm going to click in this cell right here. Now, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut for AutoSum, Alt equals. Now, you got to be careful when you do that. If this wasn't a formula here, it would try to grab a bunch of numbers that wouldn't be appropriate. So whenever you use the sum function or average or any of those, be careful. Excel tries to guess, and it guessed right this time, but it doesn't always. I'm going to Control Enter, and then I'm going to click and drag this down. Now let's see if there's another way to do this. If I just highlight these cells right here, I want totals in all of these, right? What about if I do the Alt equals trick here? Alt equals. Now wait a second, that's kind of scary. It didn't even give me a chance to see what cells it were grabbing. I'm going to notice that the active cell is right there and hit F2. Hey, look at that. It did. It got the this many above. If I were to click over here and hit F2, oh, it still did it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells above. All right, now let's do, and notice something here. I'm going to blow this up, and I'm going to hit F2. Notice that it is a sum function with a range. We talked about that just a couple videos ago. That's very important because if we were ever to insert columns, this formula would update. Now I want to show you something. I want to click in this cell and do the wrong formula because we'll see why it's wrong in just a moment. I'm going to hit equals, and then I'm going to click that, plus, I'm going to use my arrow keys, plus, so in essence what I did is I got the 3 cells to my left, but not using the sum function. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Now, how do we calculate net pay? Right here, we say equals, and I'm going to use my arrow keys. I'm going to hit the left arrow key and go get my gross pay. And then I'm going to type minus, and then the left arrow. Notice even though it was off the screen, it still got it right. So that formula is 4 to my left minus 1 to my left. I'm going to Control Enter. Remember, that's efficient because if you're going to do something to the cell immediately, you might as well keep it selected. Point to my fill handle and click and drag. I'm going to click on the last one and hit F2 just to make sure. Sure enough, it looks like it got it just right. Escape. Now I'm going to click here and Alt equals. That one will work fine too. That's adding up the total net pay. Now, let me scroll down just a little bit. Now here's the deal. You just finished this table, right? And you use your mixed cell references, your assumption table, your range functions here, except for that one, right? And your boss comes in and says, hey, you got 2 hours left in the day. I need you to build a new payroll table because we have a new deduction. And your boss doesn't know that it might only take a couple seconds to update a table if you build it efficiently. They always think you have to start from scratch. So you kind of look over your shoulder at your boss and you say, boss, what deduction would you like? And she says, well, I'd like to have a pension deduction. So you look over your shoulder again and you say, you mean like this, boss? And you right click the column and point to insert. And you said, well, what'd you say? It was a pension. So you type pension, enter, and you say, oh, what percentage? Oh, she said, we'll start at 2%. So you type 2.00. And then you highlight this whole column of formulas. Remember, that's a range function looking 5 above. These are all mixed cell references. That's even a formula looking down there. So you highlight all these, still, 5 seconds into it, and you copy over like that. And you say, oh, you mean like that, boss? And your boss's jaw drops, right? And she says, that can't possibly be right. And you say, no, it is. Watch this. I'm going to hit F2 right there. And sure enough, because we set up our assumption table correctly and we used mixed cell references, it got the right number there and it got the new correct assumption input number right there. Not only that, but if you scroll over here, because we used a sum function with a range, right, it picked up that right there. And now I'm going to click here and hit F2. That's why you never use plus, 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 plus. You always try to use a range function like that because that formula doesn't pick it up. But no problem. We can click and copy over that. The net pay works just fine. All these other formulas work just fine. That is amazing. Now, we'll see you next basic video, but don't forget, if you want to download these, just go to my YouTube channel and then click on this link on the left side, and there's the workbooks and the book, and there is the address for you. See you next trick.